Hi there, it's Alison from Boomerang Pilates, and today we're going to talk about hands and hand tension and how that affects your shoulders and how effective it can be to open up the muscles and the structures in your hands and forearms when it comes to doing all the hands on the ground shapes, so quadruped, all the quadruped positions, plank positions, downward dog positions, anywhere that you are making contact with your hands down into the floor. So I usually have pretty good orientation of my hands and my forearms relative to the ground. The ground itself is providing some of what makes it possible for me to do that. I don't know if you can see. Nope. So if I organize my elbow pits so that they're pointing straight forward, my hands look pretty good. But a really nice little way to test that is if you take your hands off the floor. Bring your arms to shoulder distance apart, turn the eye of the elbow so that it's pointing up towards the ceiling or as close to that as is possible for you, and then see, if I lean back so you can kind of see my hands relative to the dark color of my shirt, can you see how cupped my hands are now? So there's lots of discussion in the movement community these days about natural hand versus the planted hand, where you're really trying to bring the knuckle of the first finger down onto the floor. And often when you do that, you can see, this is really important as a teacher, if you look around and you see that a lot of your clients or your students have red marks or white marks on their hands where the circulation is being inhibited because there's so much tension being generated between the tension of the hand and the plant of the floor, you'll notice that if you allow a more natural hand position, that eases the strain and the stress and it's easier on the wrist. But that's partly a result of the whole structure. Tension in the shoulder is going to create tension in the hand. So if you're trying to externally rotate this part of your body, the tension has to unwind. It's like when you're squeezing toothpaste out of the toothpaste tube. It's got to go somewhere, right? If you don't have the lid off the toothpaste tube, it's going to pop eventually, right? Not that your hands are going to pop, but there is that consistency of effect through the whole system. And if you are not a teacher, you're a student of a movement modality, you just have to be aware that it's not just about your hands, it's also about the rest of that chain of that system. But for the purposes of today, we're going to do some hand exercises. So I would invite you to just quickly pop yourself down into a plank position or into a quadruped position and see what happens if you get yourself all nicely lined up, lower back relaxed, wide across the tops of the shoulders, let your head release a little bit so that you're not pulling tension into your neck. And then play around with, if you have your hands comfortably flat, well, can you get your hands comfortably flat on the floor? I was working with a client the other day who couldn't put her hands flat at all. And if so, where does the eye of the elbow go? And then if you spin right from the top of the back of the joint so that you're bringing the arm bone to forward, making sure you're not hyperextending your elbow, but keeping that nice stable position. Now what are your hands doing? You'll probably find there's a lot of cupping. So you can just take note of what that's doing. And we're going to do a few things. We're going to start with a whole hand, finger, forearm exercise that my fantastic piano teacher showed me that he got from his Pilates instructor partner. So you're going to start with your arms out in front of you. Flex the hands and the wrists. This is maybe better from the side. There we go. And then deliberately curl your fingers and pull into fists, thumbs wrap around, and then curve down. Really reach until you feel the lengthening all through the forearm. And then keep the fists. You want everything lining up from the front, so no elbows popping out to the side. And then pull back in, like you're trying to squeeze orange juice out of your biceps. Keeping the clenched fists. And then reach and flex. Pull the hands back, pull the fingers back, shoulders dropping down nice and snuggled to the sides of the ribs. And then fists, articulating through the fingers and the hands, and pull back in. And one more. Reach, flex, fists, pull down, reach the arms in, and then shake out your hands. And then if you happen to have yoga tune-up balls in your possession, which I should have had beside me but I didn't, you can take a yoga tune-up ball out of its little tote and then use your yoga tune-up ball to spin the skin on your hands, right down onto your fingers. You can put your hand on a yoga block or something if you want something more stable to press into. I'm happy just using my leg. And you go right up onto the forearm, avoiding your jewelry. Press and twist, spinning the skin. So what we're trying to do is, if you think of your skin, your fascia, and the underlying muscle as a peanut butter sandwich, we're trying to spin the skin relative to the fascia like it's the peanut butter and the muscle underneath. And we're trying to increase a little bit of circulation. The reality is, I can't see your muscle fibers. I can't feel what's happening in your nervous system. But as a teacher, I can see what happens with your skin. So if you are moving around your skin and you're seeing there's some, you get that flush of redness, you know we're increasing some blood flow. We know we're bringing some circulation to that area. And I can usually see that there's a difference in the function afterwards, and you'll certainly feel the difference as a client. You flip over and you do the same thing on the other side. Twist the skin on your hand right down onto your fingers. When's the last time you actually manipulated your fingers from the outside, right? We do all this fine motor stuff, right? All of this over and over and over and over and over again. But when's the last time something was manipulated on your hand? Probably not recently. And it feels kind of cool. I like it. So I was working with a client the other day who has a history as a competitive volleyball player. So really lots and lots of years worth of focusing on how she uses her hands, and like this, right? Lots of this, lots of that, very, very flexed, working flexed position. So she typically can't get her hand flat on the floor when we do quadruped work. And we went through this series, and it was just mind-boggling, the difference between the before and the after. So you might find this is really an effective practice. So you come all the way through. And you roll and you roll and you roll. And then you spread out the fingers of one hand so that we open up the spaces in between, and then you use the fingers of the other hand to work into the webbing. So I'm going to come closer so you can really see this. You can't even see my head anymore though. You want to get into here and then press in. There can be quite a lot of sensation connected to this. This tends to be a really, again, understimulated area, in the sense that it's often in the same series of shapes over and over and over again. And the tension that can build up is impressive, right? So we want to get right in and open that up. Don't forget the space in the thumb. I have hypermobile thumbs, so I try to work into a straight thumb as much as I can. It's really hard for me to do. And you want to manipulate that webbing. As an added bonus, you're having to use your shoulders for stability, and not be hiking up like this. And then relax your fingers completely and use the other hand to manipulate the joints. And you're going to move through each of your fingers, move them around like seaweed, trying to go into all the different potential configurations of shape. The nice thing about this particular series is, we're spending a bunch of time doing this as like a little mini class, all in a row. But you can pop this into your day, easy peasy, right? Take 1 minute and do this, 30 seconds on each hand, while you're reading an article, while you are reading to your kids, while you're waiting for the kettle to boil. So now you're going to go back to the thumb and start to squeeze and roll and twist, and you're going to finish this one by getting right onto the nail bed. And you're going to squeeze down and roll across the nail. Again, this is not a part of your hands that tends to get any kind of pressure stimulation. And again, if this feels horrible for you, it's probably not a great choice. A little uncomfortable, I'm okay with, This is fantastic if you have arthritis. If you have really bad arthritis and your hands are super sensitive to the touch, probably not a great choice to push hard. But getting that stimulation into the hands is really critical for keeping the mobility in rheumatoid arthritis, which is osteoarthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis is a different kettle of fish. So then if you just wiggle your fingers out, you might find that they feel different from one side to the other. And then you want to do the same thing on the other side. You're going to get into the webbing between the fingers, keeping a big spread, right? You want to get lots of distance between the fingers. You're going to rub back and forth. You can go individually. This stuff is all up to you, right? Do it in a way that works best for you. This is probably the most exciting video I've ever made, don't you think? But if you have really tight hands and tight shoulders and tight forearms, the results of this can actually be quite exciting. Don't forget your thumb. And then you go through and you relax the joint and use the other hand to manipulate. You want to get through all of the potential shapes right from the base, the joint that's closest to the hand, right through to the one closest to your fingertip. La 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 la. We've been having a heat wave here in Toronto, and I've been thinking about all week, oh, I need to get this video done, and it has been too hot and too sticky every day to even think about it. Okay, I've been thinking about it, it's been too hot to do it. Seems to have finally broken a little bit today. So you can feel potentially there's quite a lot of difference from your dominant to your non-dominant hand. You might find it's easier to get the non-dominant hand to relax a little bit. And then you go back to the thumb and you start to squeeze and roll and twist, and you finish by rolling right across the nail bed and getting a bunch of pressure and circulation in there. And you move through to the second finger. I guess you don't probably need to see a whole ton of detail. The butt walk, an excellent way to entertain yourself while you're playing with your hands. You can just do a little of this, multitasking, step your life, a little oblique work, unless it hurts your back, in which case don't do it. Working your way through, one finger at a time, one finger at a time. So I'm sitting on the floor. I'm perfectly happy sitting on the floor. I find it's pretty easy and straightforward for me to not sink into my back when I'm sitting on the floor. I just perch up on my sit bones. If that's not the case for you, you do not need to be sitting on the floor. You can be sitting on a bolster, you can be sitting on, a sofa, you can be sitting on a chair, you can sit wherever is appropriate for you. I don't really want you doing this in a way that makes you feel like, oh my God, are we nearly done? My back hurts. It's not going to get you the best of all possible outcomes. So having done all of those things, right, you get all that kind of movement. Come back into the first exercise. So extend the arms, pull the hands back, including the fingers. See if you can have that little sense of turning the eye of the elbow towards the ceiling so that your arms are parallel with each other. And then fists, curl through, wrap your thumbs around, pull the wrists down, and remember you're trying to make sure that you get this shape rather than this shape or this shape, right? Big deviation at the wrist. And then you pull the wrists in, squeezing and still trying to stay. Wow, I'm so cutting my head off here. Hi. Pulling your wrists in, extend. Now I'm getting ab work at the same time by leaning back. Flex, not the point for you. Fists, pull the fists down, bend the elbows, pull the forearms in towards your shoulders, squeeze your biceps, and then release and shake them out. Long through the hands. So arms are long and straight. This is intended to get in through the base of your fingers, not through your wrists, right? So it's not this shape, it's this shape. And then untwist your hands and flip over so you have the other forefinger in front. Lengthen. Keep your thumbs as wide as you can, and if you are like me and you are a big thumb hyperextender, see if you can keep your thumbs straight and wide, which for me is like crazy hard to do. Shake them out, and then go back to where we first started. Come into whichever quadruped position is interesting for you. So you could be in a plank, you could be in just in a quadruped load-bearing position, you could go into a downward dog, whatever shape you used to compare with the first time. Making sure you've got, this is really good for your rumbling push-up, just for those of you who are in the restorative exercise crowd. And take a look. How do your hands feel on the floor? Can you get your hands on the floor differently than you did the first time? Do you have a different degree of mobility in terms of where you can place your upper arm bone? So perhaps not the most dramatic of all exercise sequences, but having that capacity to individuate and articulate your hands relates a lot to your shoulders. We'll talk about that more in another video. But as part of this debate, lots in the yoga world, but also in other movement modalities, about how to place your hand on the floor. It's so critical to remember that A, it's different for everybody. B, it's different for each individual person from day to day. If you spend a big day on the computer, your capacity to get your hands flat on the floor is going to be different from a day when you didn't do that kind of activity with your hands. A day when you did a bunch of tree climbing, right? It's going to open up all kinds of stuff. So try not to get yourself into a box where you have to do the same thing every time. Give yourself permission to honor what's happening in your body in any given moment. But also to remember that, yeah, it is more comfortable to be in a natural hand position, but that's because that natural hand position is respecting the tension flow along the whole line. It's not just about your hands. So working your hands changes their capacity. Opening up the tensions in your hands and forearms changes the capacity in your shoulders, because it is all connected, and it's all connected in a good way. It's connected in a way that means you can have an effect from one body part to the next. So if your shoulders are really sore and you don't want to work into your shoulders, do stuff with your forearms. It will make your shoulders feel better. If you are a movement practitioner, play with that in your own body. Give yourself permission to play around with that. If you're a teacher, look for that in your clients. Make sure that you are noticing if there's an inhibition, if there's a range restriction happening in the body part you're looking at. Look up or down the chain and see what else you could be cueing, or what exercise you could be introducing before you go back to that exercise that's going to affect and improve the function of that whole area in the body, instead of thinking only about the hand placement, or only about the elbow placement, or only about the shoulder blade. One thing affects the other, and you can't ask your clients to focus only on one thing. You can ask your clients to focus on one thing. You have to be looking at all the things. All right? So play with that. Have a lovely weekend. If you're here in Toronto, enjoy the slightly less hot weather for the next couple of days, and we'll see you next time here at Boomerang Pilates. Bye.